Well, hello, happy Monday. I'm coming on here in the afternoon around these parts just to do a little face forward check-in. It has been, continues to be a very full time over here, as I know it is for all of us, especially in this time of typical transition between the winding down of summer, the gearing up of the next season, fall in this case, over here in the Northern Hemisphere, of transition and adjustment and processing all the things. And so decided to pull a couple cards before I came on just to try to pull my words and thoughts together. And I got for us to talk about the Five of Pentacles, followed by the Ace of Pentacles. And then a final card is the Four of Wands, which is actually where I'm starting because, this is a card about family and home and foundations and tribe and togetherness and the celebrating and passing of milestones and much more. But right in the thick over here of life transitions, and specifically, as many of you may know, I dropped my oldest daughter off yesterday for her third year of college. And we're getting ready to move my next daughter in for her first year of college this Friday. So all the feels up in here. It's definitely a big Four of Wands milestone, shifting and changing in the home space, and a lot of other aspects about this card that I certainly relate to. And I know that for all of us, honoring major life chapters and shifts, and you're just feeling all the emotions as well that come along with that, finding our rhythm, finding our groove. And that's kind of where I've been at is, with everything going on, I've been running into, challenges with, of course, keeping up with our usual rhythm here on the Sharecast in terms of our Sunday card pulls and offering free personal card pulls and all the things that I have really come to love as a part of my work, my loving service. And this one really smacked me in the face when I pulled it because, come on, I mean, this feeling of a collective feeling of being squeezed and depleted in our energy, in our reserves, but also wondering if we have enough energy to keep up and continue to show up at the door in that same way. And just a worn out feeling, maybe a little scattered or even left out in the cold spiritually, because like I'm saying is, I have very strong feelings and an understanding and an impression, but struggling to find the words or the inspiration in the way to show up and share it and to continue persevering and perhaps behind the same old doors versus, where's my door and when is it going to open? When is that light going to shine in and show us exactly where that next step is? And enter in the Ace of Pentacles. So just in a quick flow here, here comes this new offering, this new guidance of, on the other side of that squeeze, on the other side of the heaviness or the density of something that can feel like loss or imbalance or something in a way that is very heavy or even draining and pulling from us. We have this new energy showing up in the Ace of Pentacles that is about it being a time to plant new sustainable seeds, honoring our worth, simplifying our focus in this case. And, here we are with juggling all these Five Pentacles up here and wondering how we're going to keep up and where do we, get those reserves from, to just this one single seed coming in as a divine offering here for building a new grounded foundation, which is also this four energy with the Four of Wands. So, for me, I know this means showing up more authentically in real time without the bells and whistles or forcing, rigid schedules on myself. Because I know, even as I'm recording this, that those of you who thank you so much for being here and a part of this Sharecast for years on end, month after month, you might just be getting in here way after I record this, like, oh yeah, geez, I hadn't even realized she wasn't here on time, like party of one over here, whipping it all up. So this is all a part of what I am receiving as my opportunities for learning, growth, healing, and expansion. And in order to expand, we first feel the contraction of the tightness of what perhaps is no longer fitting, is no longer, able to be sustained in this way, that I'm just stepping into and being present with, all while knowing that the bulk of my energy is needed at home and with my family and in that space in terms of honoring these cycles. And I'm sharing this with you and saying it because I know, not only do I trust, but I know that there's going to be something in here for each and every one of you. And it's all relatable, no matter what our specifics are. So today, in that spirit of honoring where we are, stepping out of the cold here and really grounding down together, with these new seeds and these new potentialities. And what does that look like? What does community look like? What does it feel like? What is reciprocity in all of that? And how do we show up? I'm going to flip the camera around. We're going to do our thing. I'm going to pull our 5 cards for the week from our beautiful Everyday Enchantment Tarot and deep messages that have been coming through. I'm going to share a little bit of the astrological weather this week. Remember, we're in between eclipses. We're winding down Leo season, gearing up for Virgo season. So there's a lot of that, influx energy that we have an opportunity to just connect with and allow to unfold as it will. And see what is supporting us around this doorway. Because, when we are feeling at that point, oftentimes that's when exactly the door, our door, our most aligned next door is right there. And we could be missing or not yet receiving of that, even though it's already here. We just energetically are working our way to being in a place to receive that. So I hope that speaks to you on whatever level it will. Let's go ahead and take a look at the altar space again for our card pulls this week. Check in with that energetic weather. I'd love to hear from you how you're doing, how you're moving through these times. And once again, share that one of the places that I'm endeavoring to get in divine timing is my Substack space, where I am feeling called to share more in the written form and communicating some of my stories and other things that will parlay with all of our fun tools and goodies with the tarot, the oracle cards, and all the spiritual musings. So that is another primary space where you can find me, where I'm merging together our Sharecast, my Empowerment Pack, and this new Substack endeavor to kind of bring together all into one new a foundation that I'm building. And I'm really seeing this 3-point tent here as very symbolic to me as to where I am, being guided at this time to focus my energy. So thank you once again for being here in whatever capacity you're able and whatever speaks to you. And let's get to it. See what's coming up here for us this week. All right, here we go. We are back at the altar space. We're going to pull our 5 cards for the week ahead in just a moment, but I'm feeling inspired, speaking of, gateway to gateway, from our now past solar eclipse to the upcoming lunar eclipse and being in this area in between. I'm going to pull 2 gateway oracle cards for us, one to open up and one to close. So let's start here as we settle on in to tune into today's Monday energy to carry us into the week and then proceed through our Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday energies from this Everyday Enchantment Tarot that is always multi-layered and rich with symbolism. I will share with you my wild tarot to life synchronicity that came for our Friday card for me in my life, in a very bittersweet way, and one that I never would have spoken to in the actual card pull when I brought the messages through last Friday, but we just can't make up. So I will share that. Unless the card comes up on its own, I'll share on the other end of this series here so you can just see the wild ways in which these cards are always connecting us in with the energies that are all around us. Okay, let's begin here with our Gateway Oracle to open up the week. Embarking on adventure. I savor the wonders of the world. We've had a hot air balloon card already this month where I shared about the unburdening, the lightening of our load as the dropping of the sandbags in order to raise our vibration. And, this is bringing me back into that 5 of Pentacles where she feels as if all is lost, right? There's this heaviness of the head, looking down, navel gazing, as they say, and, feeling that pull that feels like all too much, those heavy sandbags that we could be carrying, and yet allowing ourselves to release, to let go, to shed those layers one at a time. It helps us to raise up and, in this case, raising up the, becoming more aerodynamic as that balloon is rising and embarking on adventure, which also brings a spark of inspiration. It moves the energy. It creates an opportunity for us to shift from perhaps a heavier state into a lighter state that if only we would look up, like in that 5 of Pentacles I was sharing, there is a light shining right on a key that is just there outside a door that we may be feeling has closed or never opened for us. And as I refer to that, I'll just bring it back so you can see, in case you didn't see my opening there. I'm talking about her feeling the weight and the heaviness of these worries, of the losses, of the lack of whatever it is that one is perceiving in this energy, to noting that if only she could lighten her load and raise up and look, there is that light shining directly on that key. So this is what we're exploring here as we step into this week. Let's get started now with our Monday energy right here and now, kicking off our week. The astrological weather I have to share with you is very light this week and actually doesn't even begin until Friday. So at this point, I'm very curious to see what's coming in from the cards for our Monday, setting the tone. Let's see here. All right, King of Blades, King of Swords, and brilliantly depicted here as the those who are stating their case, submitting their evidence. And in this case, a King of Blades, a King of Swords is very clear. It's Aquarius energy, so it's very much about the clarity of mind and thought and expression, communication, but also in a new, innovative way. And so I'm feeling that because of how I'm trying to show up here and figuring out, what is the best path forward in that regard, that it feels like that may be the case for many of us that are standing in our power or finding our way, speaking our truth and being ever more authentic, which is interesting when they're here in those wigs, because what's really going on under there? Let's see your true scalp. But I digress. Just a little fun way of just dipping into the energies here. We'll explore even deeper, the Everyday Enchantment Tarot's take on this energy as well when we look into the messages. Okay. Let's keep going with Tuesday's energy for a potential block or challenge this week. A potential block or challenge. Tuesday. This is one of my favorites. This is Major Arcana, Temperance energy. And I've talked about this card over the years. I made a reel about this card because the Temperance is the energy of the middle path, of dipping our toe into something, but creating that balance, healing, and harmony when it comes to being in flow. And brilliantly, she's here offering 2 glasses of fresh pressed juice, one made from red apples, one from green apples. And these 2 showing themselves very closed off, arms folded, at an impasse here, perhaps, where there's a closure or a non-willingness to meet in the middle, to find the balance. And yet she's offering them both with a smile, like, it's red, it's green, they're both juice, right? There's this sense of really the press, the squeeze that we could be feeling of finding our sweet spot when it comes to, and in this case, it makes us think of relations, our interactions with others of maybe polar opposites or two different sides of something that could be feeling quite challenging. But infinite ways that this energy could show up. Point being that it is a major arcana card, which in the tarot is significant energy on our fool's journey. So the challenge this week, the potential block that we're coming up against is significant in our walk. So we pay attention. So we put a little of our heart and thought and reflection into that. So we will take a look more deeply at that when I get into the intuitive messages. And then Wednesday is going to be our midweek blessing. Ooh, that shot out, so I'm going to take it. Oh, another major arcana. So as you see, the black borders here are indicating those significant stops on our fool's journey. Another beautiful reference, the death card, death and rebirth, transitions, right? It's like you're no longer where you once were, not yet perhaps where you will be, but here in the in-between, there can certainly be. And this is a beautiful card of showing generations. I know from having worked with this deck in the past that the intended symbolism here is the grandmother sharing stories with her granddaughter about her younger self, about, a ghost of grandma past here in a way in her youth and in her life, and bringing together, and the crows. This is all about change. This is all about being on the precipice of from, what once was to what is to what will be. And I shared at the opening here that I have 50% of my children, my first two born now, going to college, stepping into this new, exciting stage of their life, which comes with a whole host of emotions and worries and anxieties and fears and, nostalgia and so much. And I think, again, that's my personal story, the way it's showing up for me right now. You don't have to have a college student to be able to relate to the frequency of what I'm conveying. Your own coming of age, your own nostalgia, your own relationship with all the things that we're touching on here feels very, very potent and very palpable. So, finding that balance, the challenge of, and I'm also feeling like, the sweet and sour, the two things between the two, and finding that sweet spot balance in between, how to be in that state. But there's a blessing in all of that that's coming in here for Wednesday. So we will explore that as well. And now Thursday, how are we growing? How have we grown? We're once again approaching. I'm not ready to rush Leo season out of here yet at all. It's my season. But we are at this point where we're turning the corner, and Virgo season will be arriving with this next weekend. So what have we been learning all throughout Leo season, throughout this month of August thus far? Let's see what's coming up with Thursday's energy. Ooh, Six of Wands, a Leo card coming in here with the fire of victory and success, jumping over those hurdles, reaching a finish line. Not the finish line. I'm saying a finish line because, again, this, this energy of beginnings and endings and beginning again, right? So each leg of the race, each leg of the relay here, there's this energy of coming to a finishing line, coming to a point that is to be celebrated. Can we allow ourselves to give ourselves credit? That's really this Leo, the fire energy of victory, success, of being seen, of expressing ourselves in a way that shows our true, authentic light that everyone is here for. Because when you do that, you're giving them permission to do the very same for themselves. So also a very strong, and 6 is also an energy of the balance, the healing, and the reciprocity and everything that we've been talking about here with this energy of coming together in our relationships and our relations, the way that we relate to one another. One more card here for the 5-card spread, and then we will punctuate with that second gateway oracle message. Friday's card coming up. the Seven of Blades. Okay, so now we have more blades on the other end. Interesting. Okay, so Seven of Blades, a card that can have to do with deception, stealing, taking of something sneakily, underhandedly, which I think we see this fella being caught red-handed on the move with taking things that don't belong to them. Well, interesting that we start with the King of Blades in the courtroom, stating our case, showing the evidence, the exhibits. And then over here, we have this energy of this, the fox is giving me that like sleight of hand, or that energy that can be a little sneaky or a little sly. But oftentimes with this card, I bring it back to you in the middle, right? To say, not so much who's taking from me, who's stealing from me, but in what way have I been engaging in my own self-sabotage? In what way have I been consenting to, consciously or unconsciously, this feeling of being taken from, or not having enough, or somebody waiting for the other shoe to drop, however it might be showing up, that this feels like an energy around getting back into tune with our surroundings in a very... with eyes wide open, because there is a sense of things that maybe have been going on right under your nose that you haven't noticed or realized, and now there is a light shining on it in a whole new way. And I feel like that also brings in some of our collective energy on the world stage as we continue to peel back the layers of truths being revealed, of waves, of these new waves revealing the new shores, which, full circle back to the words that I channeled ahead of this month, dipping into these August energies. Sometimes the way that those new waves arrive at our shores is through this revealing of that which has been going on right there all the time, that we weren't able, ready, or willing to see yet, that is now coming into fruition, into light. So, again, going to vary for everybody, but just giving you my initial intuitive hits. Let's close out the cards with one last gateway oracle pull for this week on the other end of our embarking on an adventure. Let's shuffle around a bit. One more card here. Close us out. Embracing the future. How is that for a gateway? How is that for a portal? How is that for stepping on through to the other side? I step into the future with an open heart. Let's add to that an open mind, right? And also open to embrace, what is coming up, whatever it is, it serves, so that whether it's preferred or non-preferred, all of the bittersweetness of those things, they all serve, they all inform, they all provide. So, let's just let that talk for itself here. And of course, I will share the oracle's message on the other end. So what we're doing here, if you are new or you're not familiar with our week ahead card pulls, which are in the process of evolving and figuring out, what's working here and how we can all benefit from this in a mutually receptacle way, is I pull these cards for the week ahead, setting the intention for the collective that whatever is needed will come to the surface for our own learning, growing, healing, and expanding. At a soul level, we use empowerment, we use our intuition, and always your free will. Right? I don't have a crystal ball here in the way of predicting things for you. It is prescriptive. Here's the energies we're tapping into this week. Then we share the cosmic weather. And I use the signs and symbols of the tarot, my intuition, these other tools that we bring in to glean different perspectives and awarenesses that you can then take out into your week, into your month, into wherever you are, and bring them in for consideration. And as always, you take what resonates, leave the rest, because there's always someone else there to pick it up. It's collective in nature. Some things will resonate more than others. I always love to hear from you as to your resonances. And with that, I'm going to share one last reflection back to last week that I teased here, and then we'll roll into some astrological weather. All right, quick flashback here. This is last week's spread, as I mentioned, and there was a little tarot to life situation over here on Friday that I do like to highlight when these things come up because it just never gets old. The signs, the symbols were setting intention to tap into the energies, which are multi-layered. They're going to show up different for everybody, but this one, just a little uncanny here, as well as being quite bittersweet. So I'm speaking to Friday's card here at the end, which was the 10 of Swords, which in and of itself represents endings. Also, being burnt out or in some way, coming to the end of a cycle, a chapter, an era, a phase, a cycle of life. And on the other side, there are new beginnings, but this particular one as it is ending. Now, also something about swords cards in general, being the nature of the blade, the nature of the sword itself can literally speak in some cases to surgical procedures or things of a cutting nature. And then, like I say, I tap into a little bit of everything, whatever's coming to me in the moment. But as I moved through this week, a situation was unfolding for my mother, actually, someone very close to me, in a situation that this card will speak for. So let me bring that up and share. So if you saw last week's card, you may recall that it does evoke rather a visceral reaction because we see this pup that is enduring some type of a veterinary procedure. And we got into, the background of this card as it was intended, and we talked about the X-ray and the illumination behind it, bringing things to light. My mother has a dear furry friend, her cat Finn, who has been with her for over 15 years since she rescued him as an abandoned little kitten found under a stairwell. She wasn't looking for a cat by any means at the time, and yet they found each other. And he has been certainly a true companion of hers these last 15 years. And he has been declining in his health. She's been very much, putting herself into a position to care for him as best she possibly can within her ability, and also within honoring his age and where he is and what he is, his own life cycle. So that was all just kind of coming to a head this week in terms of some procedures and things and stuff that she had been having done for him, that on Friday, this day's card, in the morning, I had heard from my mother that Finn had in fact had a very difficult evening, and that they were going to be having sort of an emergency vet appointment that would likely, be his last visit to the vet, that he wouldn't be coming home. And my mother, it was very difficult decision always, but Finn did cross the Rainbow Bridge on Friday. So like I say, it's heavy, and it's definitely something that we feel the feels about, as a 10 of Swords can be. Certainly all endings of any kind can carry with it that frequency, but there's just something undeniable about the symbolism on this card and then what actually happened in life around me when connecting in with this. So I just, I shared this with some that I talked to on Friday to just say, wow, this stopped me in my tracks when I realized that this is the way that the card presented itself for Friday, and then a quite literal expression of that played out, right here in my orbit. So just sharing that in terms of the ways in which the cards can come up in very unexpected ways, and then also in retrospective ways, in terms of when you look back, you can suddenly connect dots in ways that perhaps you never would have seen or sensed going into it. But just the unbelievable communication from your higher self, from spirit, when we tap in and set an intention. So with that, let's proceed into our energetic weather for this week. All right, here we go with just a few aspects I want to mention, and they're all happening at the end of the week, August 21st, Friday, into the weekend. So on Friday, August 21st, in addition to me taking my daughter Maddie to college for her first year, Venus opposite Saturn. So Venus in Libra will align the opposite Saturn in Aries. So that's bringing some challenges to our relationships. But this is not all bad news. In fact, this alignment will help us set up and take responsibility for dynamics that we're no longer willing to tolerate. If things are flowing in a positive direction, Saturn's presence will help us deepen our relationship bonds and form stronger commitment. If things are not flowing so well, Saturn's presence will be reminding us to set boundaries. Interesting. I can see a number of cards this week playing into that, starting with that King of Blades, right out the gate, the laying down of the boundaries and the lines, and bringing up the clarity to the surface, and then all the way to Temperance, helping us find that middle path, the Death card bringing in what needs to fall away and what that creates space for in the way of new beginnings. And then ultimately with that 7 of Blades that we'll be exploring, which is where, don't let anyone steal your joy, not even an aspect of yourself that may be self-sabotaging. And, again, I can bring this into my own lived experience to say all the bittersweetness of a child launching, leaving the nest, and all of the many different things that come with that. But ultimately, not letting any of that steal the joy of a reflection and celebration of the passing of the baton. Enter our 6 of Wands there with the relay. Passing of the baton to this next leg and all that it brings. So, again, that's just the way that I weave together and share with you the energies, the true to life, what's happening for you or what you're observing and others around you, and then bringing through insights and awarenesses from your own intuition. So that's happening. That hands off then to Saturday, the 22nd, the Regulus Gateway. So this is, and that's why I'm sharing, because Sunday I'll come back in as if it all goes to plan with next week's card pulls. So I want to share this aspect going into the weekend. Regulus Gateway, an incredibly powerful and abundant day. The Regulus Gateway is marked by the sun aligning with the fixed star Regulus. This star is known as the heart of the lion and is a powerful activator of the heart and crown chakras. It is connected to spiritual realms and helps us to unlock higher wisdom, abundance, and love. It's a beautiful energy that we can use to raise our vibration and to bring abundance into our life. This is part of what I was sharing over the Lion's Gate with the ancient Egyptian connection to. This was actually in the beta wave that I shared for the Lion's Gate of some of the origins relating to this very alignment. And so yes, that does change year after year in the cosmos. It is actually happening here on August 22nd, the Regulus Gateway. At the same time, August 22nd to 23rd, so crossing over from Saturday into Sunday, Sun in Virgo. We move out of that fiery Leo energy into the earth sign of Virgo. Happy birthday to all of our Virgos. Our attention here shifts to a more grounded, methodical approach. So we may feel the desire to get organized, to hone in on our routines, and to start preparing for the end of the year. And I'll say with that, because it's just so amazing to me how, intuitively or mindlessly, we somehow are in rhythm with all that is, because Virgo season, not a coincidence that it happens right as back to school, back to the fall season. Again, I'm speaking to the Northern Hemisphere, but you can flip it to the other side for the Southern Hemisphere, where again, new routines, getting into a little bit more structure, organization, actually happening in our lives while happening in the cosmos. We start preparing for this back end then of the year, all while launching into a new season. Virgo is represented by the Virgin Goddess, who reminds us that our true connection with God, divinity, source, comes from within. We are the temple, and it's time we start treating ourselves as such. Yes, another part that Virgo will highlight is our health, our physical bodies, how we're caring for ourselves, and thinking of it as, yes, the temple, the source, the host of your spirit, which deserves nothing less than the best. So it really is about bringing our focus back in a very grounded way, in a very practical way, into our routines, into our care for ourselves, our health, our wellness, and more. So more to come there as we get into Virgo season. But for now, let's put the camera back down and check out our cards. First, we're going to launch into our gateway message to kick off the week. All right, opening up the gateway here, we start with embarking on an adventure. I savor the wonders of the world. So this is speaking to the new frontiers that await you. You are entering a period of expansion and are also going beyond self-imposed limitations. We talked about that 7 of Blades at the end of the week being about that inner saboteur, right? So even if you feel hesitant, this is the time to try something new and to do things in a different way. You might even visit far off lands, step out of your comfort zone and into some fun. So the universe wants you to know there is a vast and wondrous vista just around the corner, but you'll never see it if you don't venture out. Adventure often entails risk, but without it, life can become lackluster and stagnant. Plan a trip. Take some classes that push you out of your comfort zone. Experiment with new styles. Do the same things that you've always done, but in new and different ways. Go beyond your boundaries and step out of character. Some questions to ask yourself with this. What is the best adventure for me to take at this time? What has kept me from seeking this in the past? What future adventures do I desire? So this can be as big as, visiting far off lands or doing something maybe a little bit more drastic or significant, if we will, in terms of those things. But I think last week we touched on this too, about shaking up the stagnated energy around you and just doing something different off the beaten path. So we talked about, stopping at a different coffee shop in the morning, taking an alternate route to work, changing up your usual, wardrobe or preferred order somewhere, whatever it might be, that you are moving energy and shaking it up to give the universe an opportunity to surprise and delight you. So that feels like, really setting us onto this path where the key is to release and let go of anything that has become dense, heavy, or stagnated so that we can create space and lightness for new vistas, for new adventures to come on the scene. So let's go ahead now and take a look at those 5 tarot cards. All right, here we go. Starting with Monday, kicking things off right here and now. It is 2:22 on my clock. So 2:22 on Monday, kicking off the King of Blades coming in, King of Swords energy. So tuning into the Everyday Enchantment Tarot, some of the highlights about this card, keywords speaking to, and I mentioned this being an Aquarian energy, very cerebral because of the air element, and the swords, the blades representing our thoughts, our beliefs, our ideas, along with our communications, analytical, articulate, fair, ethical, honorable, authoritative, powerful, objective. Remember, the king is the embodiment of a suit. Doesn't have to be male, female, king, queen, royalty. It's about the notion that we have arrived at the highest expression of a suit in the final card of it. And here, the King of Blades is embodying this energy of being clear and with the boundaries I mentioned and the authenticity and those types of aspects. So I feel like a continued push toward these new waves, revealing new shores, new truths, old truths, just the plain old truth coming to the surface feels new because it's just now coming into our awareness. But it is this cyclical nature of the waves coming in, rolling in, the tide shifting. So many of us experiencing that in our lives. And then, of course, on the collective world stage, or in this case, the courtroom, right? Perhaps of the public opinion and all the different judicial, comparisons I could draw right now. Like I mentioned in the card pull, the wigs they're wearing. Really feeling like, everybody having their own story and presenting their own exhibit A, B, C of why they back it up with those beliefs, those ideas, coming from their lived experiences, coming from their subjective point of view. So this is pushing us to step into a more objective space, into a space that is clear and authoritative in its way of standing in its own power, own authenticity, speaking the truth with integrity. So those are all themes that are setting the stage here for our week. And I feel, continue on, especially with the next two major arcana cards that we receive in this week's spread. So let's take a look at that next position. All right, Tuesday brings us into a potential block or challenge this week. And this is a very creative and beloved interpretation to me when I saw this version, because as I shared in the card polls, the temperance energy of finding the middle path and being in that place of balance while also recognizing difference, recognizing extremes, recognizing, again, the red juice, the green juice, the masculine, the feminine, the different, and here again, the body language speaking for itself. It's challenging because have we been closed off? Have others that we've encountered been closed off, the body language speaking there, to understanding different varieties, different flavors, different ways of, the way that presents itself to us, and then ultimately having our own free will choice to determining how we're going to be or flow in that. So temperance, combining, consolidating, moderation, the center, synthesis. It also is speaking to Virgo energy, health, healing, harmony, and calm. There's a peaceful energy here as well. So all of that in the mix, and all of that presenting its own unique blend, cocktail, if we will, of challenges, unique challenges and blocks if we take them that way. But also I'm getting some people like pulp, some people don't like pulp. So somebody might encounter a pulpy juice and be completely grossed out, and somebody else would be, loving that juice in their yum, So again, it speaks to the differences of our preference, the differences of our experience, the difference all around, but bringing that together in a blend. And so that's ultimately what we're being challenged with at this time, in this age, as we are innovating and stepping into the collective and humanity and coming together in community and healing through. Sounds wonderful, but the bumpy ride, the experience to get there is also being highlighted here. And I want to point out the details of these cards, because again, when we talk about truths being revealed, things coming to the surface, not lost on me that particular t-shirt is hearkening, that movie V from years ago, which did have all to do with different layers of truths and disclosures coming to the surface, and the uprising of the people. It's revolutionary. And this is the time that we are in. This is exactly what is already in motion, with the North Node now in Aquarius, the South Node in Leo, being here in eclipse season. All of it. So you pick the level, the layer, the angle that speaks to you. You go as surface or deep as you wish, but the cards are speaking to the energies. And so this is significant energy on our Fool's journey, and so is the blessing coming in right with that for Wednesday. All right, Wednesday's midweek blessing coming in with another major arcana, the Death card, Death, Rebirth. Endings and new beginnings being highlighted again. And I want to, it's so funny, we can't make it up. I mean, I came in here and I spoke to the Friday card from last week and how, it had this uncanny reflection to what was showing up in my orbit with my mom and Finn, her cat. And I said that it was the 10 of blades because I felt the frequency of it as an ending to a new beginning. But actually, in just flipping through the book now, I was reminded that it was actually the Ace of Swords, not the 10 of Swords. But again, one end of the spectrum or the other. After the 10, the ending, the finishing of something, comes a new beginning, comes a fresh start, comes a new dawn on the horizon. So to me, whether I read it as 10 of Swords energy or Ace of Swords, it's also speaking to this cyclical, the metamorphosis, the energy of endings to new beginnings, sunrise, sunset, and rise again. So clarifying that here with the Death card, because this is also a depiction of endings and new beginnings. And with that, rebirth energy. So rebirth, renewal, ending, beginning, change, let go, transition, transform, purging, eliminating, and all. So sharing some of Poppy's words here in the Everyday Enchantment Tarot as to what she was bringing in through this beautiful depiction of the Death card. That while it doesn't resemble the traditional Rider-Waite, where we see a dark knight on a pale horse with the skeleton and the scythe and, the energy that traditional card evokes, this is a grandmother that's sitting with her small granddaughter in a midwinter wood. And the sun is reborn. It's just rising. And it's at winter solstice. And it's risen through the bare trees here with the golden light, suggesting an uplifting spiritual presence. The grandmother and the girl both wear funky Wellingtons, a woolly hat, showing their closeness and their similarity to each other, because they are in fact family and they are in fact aspects of one another in that way. And yet, looking here at sitting together on that log, the older woman is reassuring, touching the child's arm as she looks into her eyes. And the granny, perhaps in realization that her time to pass away is coming closer than ever, right, through the circle of life. And then it's easier then to explain the natural cycles of dying back and then regreening in this favorite woodland place. So because they're in this sort of bleak wintry scene where the trees are bare, perhaps covered in icy, this energy that we feel of winter, and yet those trees we know will bloom again, that the spring will come, and so forth. And so using that as the way of conveying that message to her beloved granddaughter, the three crows are coming in as otherworldly messengers. And she's accompanying them is actually one that's cawing at the elderly woman's feet. And then also there's two that are flying upwards towards the sun, and that's representing the spirits taking flight into the light. The snow on the ground here, and yet we also see some flowers are starting to blossom and bloom, the snowdrops. So again, there's this, this spectrum of these different aspects of the seasons, beginnings and endings. And so also this ethereal young woman smiling there barefoot on the frozen ground, which could be, as I mentioned in the card pull, representing the eternal essence of the older lady, her true spirit. And that's all coming forward in this gorgeous depiction of death, rebirth energy, something that is absolutely so can be so dense and difficult and all the things, and especially in conveying that to a child or understanding loss in all of its forms. But what more visceral than the notion of losing a beloved grandparent or elder, which is something that we surely can all relate to, having a loss of such gravity in our lives, and yet also knowing the most profound of new beginnings and illuminations coming in with the new dawn. So definitely an ongoing theme here, not lost on me, that we see the sun rising just over the other side here in the backdrop with my It's Just a Phase altar decor that I brought in this month, speaking to eclipse season. And yes, while it may be very intense, very dense, very potentially dizzying, with the abrupt shifts and changes and the pulling out of rugs that can happen in eclipse season, not always, but it can. We're not sugarcoating the fact that I would say, the death card almost never indicates a true death, as we, it's a energetic death. It's symbolic. Most of the time. That being said, there are weeks where I've said that, and someone did experience a loss of a much deeper sense when we're talking about the loss of a loved one or a famous death or something occurring, which is in fact happening as I speak, of course, every day. It seems we're bombarded with death in a sense that can become very heavy, very dense, very hopeless. This is about bringing together an understanding of tapping into a frequency that we all know, that we all can access, which is understanding what it feels like to have something so precious, so special, so powerful as a heart-to-heart connection like one may have with a grandparent. And again, even still, not everybody's story. Not everybody's lived experience, but I'm speaking in general terms and tapping into my own experiences. And I have both that I just spoke of, both unbelievable connection and bond to grandparents, and then also the complete opposite of rejection and coldness and abandon. So, I'm just tapping into that to be able to have a sense of the collective energy and helping to guide you, hopefully, to a place where you can connect within that frequency to yourself, whatever your specifics are. But the idea of a young girl sitting with her beloved grandmother, who is there with all of her wisdom and all of her insight to share with her sort of this circle of life lesson in a very beautiful, gentle, natural way by utilizing, the backdrop of the seasons and the turning over of all of that in order to convey this most precious message, that is certainly all but and bittersweet. So, powerful. Remember, this is a blessing. So as things are taking flight and taking leave and going off onto new horizons as the sun rises again, we're also not negating that calling of change is powerful, is potent, and can be very intense, right? So let's keep going from the blessing to the growing, right? How are we growing this week? All right, Thursday is how we are growing. And I mentioned this card came up last week. Back again, card 1 of the major arcana, the Magician. Now, a key word coming in here through the Everyday Enchantment Tarot is action. I've been talking about that. When I did the Lionsgate card polls, we used the fire element along with the fire horse. And the key word there is action, right? We talked about whether we're taking slow, steady, detailed, deliberate action like the Knight of Coins, or maybe a quicker, faster moving here with this Mercury ruled energy of the Magician. So, it's bringing into our awareness the potential that we all have. This is also very masculine energy, the air element. So again, there's thoughts, there's ideas, there's moments of aha, where suddenly it's like, pick up the shovel and start digging, do it, right? If we've been mapping out, thinking about, like if you were, literally planting a garden, but sort of planning out, mapping it out, and then like not taking the action to create it. Where are those things in your life that you've been thinking about and honing and detailing to a fault, that now this is the time? How are we growing? We're ready to pick up the shovel and take inspired action. So it's saying that this magician's earthy pentacles or coins are the golden sunflowers that he has grown from seed, symbolizing dynamic masculine energy. His little son points at these flourishing flowers with pleasure because he was part of their creation. The traditional magician has an infinity sign above his head, while here it's a slow worm that is curled in a figure 8, which represents the eternal Ouroboros. Okay, let's take a look at that. This is a worm. Okay, I think I thought that was a snake last week, but either way, and I'm so sorry, it's so dark and hard for you to see detail, but you know, what it's speaking to there is that the magician is one of the cards, one of the only cards in the tarot that features all 4 suits, the swords, the pentacles or coins, as it was just speaking to, the cups, and the wands. And so it was just sharing with us what represents the coins or pentacles. And I think it's interesting that it specifically is mentioning that when we're just coming from that Knight of Coins, and we're kind of comparing, the difference in the way that those two, the Knight of Coins and the magician, create, how they act, how they make their magic in the world. And so there's a balancing here too of not being immobile to the point of complete inactivity, which is interesting because we had this 4 of Swords inviting us to take a break, set down those swords, just take a moment, do nothing. And then we have this Knight of Coins kind of picking up the pace and starting to do some very specific and deliberate things. And now we have this magician energy. So that's also telling me, yes, on the other side of this eclipse, things are going to pick up. Things are going to speed up in a way, even more than they already are. I mean, time, crazy, the way time is passing, the way that things are shifting so quickly, innovating and accelerating in a way that I'm really feeling that in this card, that there's an energy of what these eclipses are bringing in that way as well. Okay, let's take a look at our Friday card to close out the tarot messages for the week, and then we will finish out with our gateway message. All right, Friday, closing out our tarot messages, that 7 of Blades. And just as I was saying how, our standing in our integrity and being our authentic selves and all the things is giving permission to others to do the same, is demonstrating a way. It's raising the bar there on this relay to where others can meet you or not, right? They have their free will choice. Enter in the 7 of Blades. Not everybody's going to get it, and not everybody's going to like it, and not everybody's going to meet you at that same level of integrity. So the 7 of Blades, called here cut and run, keywords of avoidance, duplicity, stealthy, stealing, independence, an outsider, leaving, betrayal, wily, and aloof. So in this card, the Rider-Waite, as a contrast, depicts a man that's creeping away from a distant camp, having stolen all the swords. Here we see a smirking youth in a baseball cap making haste from the scene of a burglary, carrying a candelabrum, a sports bag full of jewels, and a laptop. And he's left the homeowner peering through his broken windows, and in one smashed pane, there are 7 points or blades of glass. This householder isn't looking towards the stealthy robber, but at 2 other passers-by. One shocked young boy holds a football that could have smashed the window, while the older lad is angry to have been framed. Between the escaping burglar and the house are 7 spikes, more blades, atop the railings. A cunning urban fox also slinks away. A fox is frequently depicted on the 7 of Swords as the archetypal thief in the night. A jackdaw is a canny bird. Remember, this is a UK influence deck, so some of these are animals and terms that some of us may not be as familiar with. A canny bird with its own reputation for taking others' glittering possessions flies alongside while an impish spirit encourages the fugitives. Not all unseen beings are supportive. Yeah, so just giving us a little flavor into the layers of depth in this card. Interesting, because that story could set up that like this burglar isn't acting alone, and perhaps, you know, the broken glass panes and the spikes and things could also be speaking to other nefarious behavior in the neighborhood, if we're to think that these kids may have broken the window or that they may have been up to something. You know, interesting to think about the different ways that you could interpret this. But, you know, wrapping up this week, it holds the frequency of things not being what they seem, and then seeing it all come to light and being exposed and being put out there in a way where, again, this gentleman may only be focused here, not realizing that all these things have just been swiped. You know, so again, I think this speaks to one particular message of, you know, where is my attention going? Where is my energy flowing? And so if I'm getting caught up in this court of public opinion and all of the drama that's playing out on the world stage, is that distracting me, taking me away, like looking at one shiny thing while something else is being taken, while something else is making off? So, you know, that's another question for reflection when we consider, you know, what evidence is being presented to us? How is it being presented to the court of public opinion? And then wherein lies my discernment? Wherein lies my ability to shine and to persevere in light of all of that? And what does that all mean? And so all those questions are not answered at this moment. So this also speaks to the different places we may find ourselves energetically, how we're feeling day to day, week to week, because of all of this sort of chaotic mix and, you know, the loud calling crow in this death card, bringing us that energy of, you know, getting our attention. And while there's other things going on, never more important than coming back to your center, getting grounded, stepping back, tuning within, using your tools. All the things that we've been bringing in here for quite some time are all happening in real time, unfolding here before our eyes, and, you know, inviting us now into a place to embrace that the future and the gateway that's being illuminated and lit up, which kind of brings us full circle, you know, to where I started when I, you know, shared my thoughts and feelings around this card coming up for me to open this up, the 5 of Pentacles, where this archway door seems to be closed and not opening. And yet, look what happens when she shifts her gaze, when she sees the blessings and the light that's shining on even some of the most difficult things, losses, changes, things coming away, creates space and illumination for your door, your archway opening, your next level. And so that's where we find ourselves as we move through this week, ultimately with this gateway energy coming in just ahead of the next eclipse coming in with Virgo season's arrival. Let's take a look now at that final message here from the Gateway Oracle. All right, final card for the week coming in, embracing the future. I step into the future with an open heart. What is expected in life tends to be realized. If you anticipate an amazing, joyous, healthy, prosperous future, this is more likely to occur for you than if you assume the worst, right? The navel gazing, like I said. So expect the best. Be open for anything, right? This or something better. Your wondrous future is nesting on the horizon of your soul, shimmering and bright. So the universe wants you to know today is yesterday's future. And in every moment, you are creating your future. So if you're patiently waiting for the future to bring you joy and contentment, your desired outcome may never arrive. But if you learn to create happiness now, your days will be filled with pleasure and bliss. It's great to have a dream. However, if you don't learn to find satisfaction in the meantime, you may not notice when your dreams come true. The purpose of life is not about manifesting your desires. It's about discovering the inner gifts of the heart and experiencing and sharing joy. So be happy now. Enjoy the journey as much as the destination. Questions to ask yourself. What is my probable future? If I'm not satisfied with it, what action steps do I need to take? What is my greatest contribution to the future? Yeah, I mean, this sums up everything that I was tapping into because I said, this or something better. I'm in flow with what is. I set the intention and then I release and let go to allow it to unfold. And when I see what's on the other side of the door, if it looks and feels very different than I expected, I am still stepping into it knowing that it is just what's needed, desired on that soul level. And that it's all about the learning, growing, the discovering of those inner gifts of the heart and experiencing and sharing joy right now, not out there somewhere in the future, not when we finally have ... but right here, right now with what I have, with what I don't have. I have the ability at all times to embody the frequency of joy, to seek out my happiness in a way that is always available to me, even if I don't see immediately in front of me the resources that I believe I need in order to experience the joy, the happiness, the lightness. It's here and now, finding the joy in the journey, not waiting for some abstract day that will arrive on the horizon. Because we can see here on the horizon, there's more mountains, right? It's not all. These mountains that you had to climb to get to this valley where the door is open and we see the golden path ahead of us. We keep on that golden path. We can see in the distance, there's a lot more mountains to climb. So be here now. Be here in this moment, wherever you are, and find the lightness and joy. Seek it out. And this is part of, what I'm starting to write about in my Substack as being a perspective detective, making it my job to seek out new perspectives, the highest available perspectives. And again, bring it full circle back to that hot air balloon card, embarking on an adventure. I savor the wonders of the world to embracing the future. I step into the future with an open heart. And somewhere therein lies, in between, the temperance, the juice, the squeeze, the sour, the sweet, all of it on the spectrum of this soul's journey, this experience that we're here for, all of it. So I hope that speaks to you on some level. Again, let me know how you're doing, what's coming up for you, your resonances. I will be sharing, as always, since we are approaching that full moon lunar eclipse on the 27th into the 28th, which will be here before we know it. There's many ways that you and I can work comprehensively. If you're already with me on the Empowerment Pack, of course. And then I do have that full moon lunar eclipse reading available as the full moon empowerment reading, a la carte. Or if you're just looking for some, maybe some more specific guidance with a few questions that you have on your heart or something that you want to explore for yourself, the Hello Empowerment is my empowered tarot reading where we can explore a couple of things together with intention, bringing through messages from the cards and the different elements that come in to get things started. Or of course, as deep as you want to go, there is a reading or a healing for that. So let me know if you're interested in connecting more comprehensively as well. Okay, thank you all so much for being here through it all, finding joy in the journey. I am sending you much love, many blessings, and we'll talk soon. Take good care.